The topic of this week that Nelly and I started is that we're looking at Dharma teachings and what is it like when you don't see those teachings within your experience. So the teaching I'm going to be talking today about is Dukkha. So Dukkha, all right, so what next? When I first learned the teaching of Dukkha, I learned it as there is suffering. And it was like a door that opened for me. I came to this practice, I feel, through a dukkha door. I was drowning in it. I had recently had a near-death experience when I first encountered the practice. And then 6 months into the practice, my niece, who was 8 years old, passed away from complications with lung cancer. And so this translation of there is suffering really fit my experience. But I remember at other people in the group, it really didn't fit for them. They were wondering, why are we talking about suffering all the time? That's not really what I'm interested in. And one woman talked about coming through a door of interest in consciousness. And she was just wanting to know a bit more about how the mind works. And Buddhism had some interesting teachings on this. And I remember I didn't even care about consciousness at that time. I wished I could care. I wished I had more interest in it. But all I could pay attention to was the dukkha that was going on inside of me. So meditators that come through this door, this dukkha door, often talk about the relief that they feel when they hear this teaching, that there is suffering, because it lifts the burden of it being your fault, life being your fault, that you had done something wrong because you're still feeling suffering, especially after many years of practice. And if you'd tried other forms of meditation where the goal was bliss or transcendence. So that I'm a failure, I'm not doing the practice, really is a common way that we make a self out of our experience. And this is very easy to do. We experience something and then we say, I'm at fault if it doesn't happen, or if it didn't go right, or I'm a failure if something isn't successful. So dukkha can come with a lot of misconceptions, and that there's other misconceptions about dukkha. So other translations I've heard take it really far, like all of life is suffering, which would negate any happiness or any transformation. Or the other one is that if there's suffering, I have no power or no responsibility around suffering. And this abdicates you from any kind of harm that gets caused from the suffering in your life. So in my reflection on this morning, I really feel the direction of the Dharma teachings when they become too global or too large. They really stay in a conceptual zone. And this is way too far from our experience. And they're more subject to misconception. So this is how I stated it. When the teachings remain conceptual, they're not really true for us yet. And they're more prone to not being able to catch our misconceptions around that teaching or the nuance around the teaching. So another interesting part of dukkha is that it comes with a remedy. And it's stated in the teachings, there is dukkha, there is the end of dukkha. And there's a lot of steps in between that, I think. I started to go, well, how do we measure this? Is there, 10,000 steps a day to keep dukkha away? Or another image that came up in my meditation was like a marble inside a pinball machine that just get knocked around, and I keep waiting for it to be spit out and gone. So that hasn't happened to me yet, and I've been practicing a long time. So over the years, we've had to retranslate this dukkha, end of dukkha, dyad. And we're not on our own. We're not going rogue. We're looking at other people that are translating that we trust, and we're comparing it to our experience. And we're not leaving the Buddhist teachings far behind. But there are many translations that feel really far from experience and are difficult to work with. So I remembered some of my first retranslations, not mine, others. But when I first heard the retranslation of dukkha as hurt, it just changed something inside of me. Being hurt, feeling hurt, hurting others. I was able to get at another aspect of dukkha. And then I heard another translation of dukkha as disillusionment and disappointment, and thought, oh, that takes on another thread that I can follow within my experience. Another thread, another translation, hard to bear. This was another way that I could get at some of the more anguishing trauma that I came into the practice with. And it wasn't really until 2018 that we started to try our own translation. And Nelly and I, between us, came up with a translation of dukkha as we are vulnerable. And that this really, again, took the teaching to another place for me. And it does seem to be a developmental arc in teaching and in learning Dharma, where we start to take our experience and the experience of others more seriously. And it gave us some confidence to give alternate translations. And we give them provisionally and with some context, not as a replacement for others, but we add more in to the teaching. So I'm back to this pinball, spitting out dukkha and looking for it to end, but not see. Oh, let me see. But the logical conclusion of this is that the practice doesn't work if it doesn't work like this, spitting it out. It's completely gone. And this is where I think questioning comes in when the teachings aren't seen in your practice, is that you really have to start questioning everything. And you have to start looking at what's really going on within your own experience. I feel like the larger Vipassana tradition has had to do this also. And regarding the end of suffering, they've added in a teaching called the second arrow, which is if you have dukkha, it will end completely if you don't add on a second arrow. So this gives you another way to work with the teaching, as you try to eliminate your add-ons and try not to add anything more to dukkha, that it could actually be this kind of base level. And I think that sometimes that works, but it also can lead to user error. What happens when you can't stop adding on, when there's still other things that come with dukkha, because it's a complex experience. It's not so simple to just cut it off. So I often see that second arrow keeps the aspiration of the end of suffering conceptual, something that may happen or you're trying to get to, but it really hasn't happened for you yet. So we've gravitated a little differently. We take more interest in the add-ons rather than trying to cut them off. We say that it's human to add on. This is going to happen. Know more about it. That will help reduce some of your misconceptions. And that we're looking at the variety of ways that dukkha ends. Sometimes it just dwindles down a little bit. Sometimes it withers away. Sometimes it goes under for a while. You don't have much dukkha around. Sometimes it disappears. And sometimes it does feel like it's cut off at the root. So these options come from our experience, from your experience, from what we've heard, and they all matter and offer a broader path for transformation. So I'll end with the question at the beginning of the talk of dukkha. So what next? Do you see your dukkha moving to a path of transformation? Is it enough for you when you're experiencing dukkha to know more about it, to trust that it will transform at some point. Has it transformed at some point? And what does it mean if you have one without the other? Dukkha, but no ending of dukkha. What does that mean to you? So I'm going to end my talk here.